You didn't know? You better ask somebody.
They do.
That's all right. There's a need to know basis, and some people just don't need to know.
Oh, we got a little Stanley. Get up there.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are in the category of singles understanding God's love towards you. Yeah, thank you. Let's huddle up over here. Singles understanding God's love towards you. I wanted to touch on a couple of things for time's sake. We may not get to everything. I have the lesson available online, so I can send this out to anyone that needs it. Also, towards the middle, I'll kind of get into access. I'm charging this laptop here. That way you can just fill out your information right on this laptop and I can send you the documentation. But what I wanted to do was look at this topic a little bit differently than maybe those who are married would assume that we're looking at it. Not necessarily that this is going to be turning into Match.com or Christian Mingles or what have you. I think sometimes the misconception for singles is that you're 100% of the time depressed or lonely, or something is wrong with you, or almost like you have leprosy at some events. It may not be anything wrong with you. I know a few people who may be married but act single for whatever reason. So I think it's important for us to understand culture and society. Things have changed in our society. In the times of the New Testament, a Jewish young man was considered, he was viewed in his more adult stage at 12 years old. And he came to full manhood at 30. There was a time in this country's history towards the turn of the century when you had the Industrial Revolution, where at 18 years old, you were out of the house and you were working and supporting yourself, sometimes 16 or 17. In the society we live in now, 18 to 25, you still may be at school. So you may not have been out on your own yet. Statistically, if we go to Christian universities, it seems like by the time it's Columbus Day, they're already engaged or married. If you go to secular, you may not have that opportunity. So my point is, culturally, things have changed in terms of how early people get married in America, period, let alone for Christians. Then you add on a layer of not wanting to be unequally yoked. I think that sometimes it's viewed when you're single in the church as if you can't pull somebody. I mean, no offense, you could probably, pull a couple people. Some of us probably got some people on do not answer calling or texting us right now. It's that they're not somebody you would want to be married to because your faith is stronger than theirs or the lack thereof of theirs. So that's the issue there as well. There's other things that are different now, especially for our sisters in this society, when you have an explosion of access to education and gender equality, which is nowhere where it needs to be, but slowly making progress each generation as the female sector gets into the workplace, more higher education. Now you have a disparity of equally yoked in terms of the secular standpoint, right? Because a lot of our sisters, or a lot of women in general, I wouldn't even just say Church of Christ, a lot of women in general are pursuing higher education. And it seems like a lot of the young men don't even have license anymore. I don't understand that concept. So I know a couple young men who are got to be in their 20s and don't drive. I wouldn't understand any anyone that will respond to a DM of somebody who don't have license. No offense, you don't have to have a car, but you have to explain to me how a man who's supposed to be the head of a household don't have license. I don't understand where will we go? Are we guess we doing live streaming dates or Netflix at my house and your house, we watch at the same time? I don't understand. Also work. Men don't work anymore. I don't understand that concept. So when you are, as a young woman, college education, which now in society that's looked at like a high school degree was, what, 50 years ago. So you go to master's or higher education in the medical community, which can go from a nurse all the way up to a surgeon, right? Or a lawyer or things like that. And you talking to a guy with some college or getting himself together, or guys love to be in the process. I don't understand. It's just a 4 years. What spectrum of the process are you if you're in the process of a degree? It's just either you enrolled or you not enrolled. It's like saved or unsaved. So again, all of these things are society based. There's a lot of aspects of our Christian interaction in terms of our day to day that I believe God knew would be different from society. Here's a way to look at it. In the Old Testament, even to the way the priests dressed was verbatim, correct? Now we talk about modesty, because if you go to Nepal, where Bridgeport has a plant work, and you go to Bridgeport, will it be the same dress? Or if I go to Jamaica or to Alaska, would it be the same physical garments, right? So when we look at those things, there are certain things in the New Testament that now when we look at it 2,000 years later, we see, okay, these things have to fit in every society, right? The Bible doesn't curtail to the society. Society have to bend back to where the Bible is. It has to fit every time period. Same thing for this concept of single, dating, and marriage, right? Like in our society, you have single, you have dating, you have engagement, but in America, engagement is not that big of a deal. You wouldn't be shocked in today's time, 2017, if you knew someone engaged and they called the engagement off. In Asia, engagement is marriage. So if you call engagement off, you got a divorce. You get what I'm saying? So the way that we look at certain things, even us sitting here in 2017 in this room, may be different than brothers and sisters looking at it in Asia in the same time period. So some of those things matter, right? So when we look at it, it all goes into society structure. And then you have another aspect of it where, depending on what culture you come from in terms of how you were raised, you have responsibility to your parents. Mm-hmm. So now you may be the older as male or female, and it's been entrusted in you to go get higher education to help the family out, right? So now if you go off and get married, and you start your own family, and for this reason, a man should leave his mother and father, and the two have to become one, you may look at it as, I can't devote that level of affection or interaction at this moment in my life because my family is counting on me. That falls a lot on those individuals who come from other countries, right? First time Americans have a lot of pressure, so they're not looking to be married in 20s to 30s, right? They're looking to get into the job force to pay back the sacrifice that the family has taken to get them where they need to be. Again, these things are different 50 years ago, especially in the church. So for us, I just wanted to take a look and start there so we all understand the time frame in which we live in, right? It's not the same. Now, when you have the internet, the digital side of things has been a blessing and a curse in every sector, in every industry. Singles or dating or talking or texting or whatever, my friend, or whatever you put as a category of something has positives and has negatives, right? Because when it's online, anybody could be anything, right? Because online, you get the right lighting and the right angle or the right words that you Google, and you are the best thing smoking, right? And there's Christian sites where these men will say they doing everything, and if you went to that church, they don't even know who you talking about, right? I pass, I preach, I baptize, same thing on the women's side. So when we look at it, it's hard to see the genuine nature of someone now, because it's so much of our interaction is digital. I can't read body language on digital. I can't tell inflection or tone of voice. There's so many things that are different in a single age group or demographic in 2017 that even 15 years ago we didn't have. So all of these things are on the mind and the shoulders of someone, I believe, that's single. And I just want to go through these things to take a look so that we understand that it's okay to be in the stage in which you are in life, and talk about this in two sections. One is the understanding of love and how understanding is in love. And I'll get to that in a second, and then go through a checklist, because I don't like to talk about topical discussions like this without a takeaway of, okay, you got me where I need to be, and what can I take away from the session to kind of implement? So we'll get into that as the second piece of it. But the first one, you'll definitely need your Bible. I try to put the scriptures up on the screen as much as possible, but I don't believe in talking about anything with spiritual significance without Bible verses. I mean, you can go anywhere and go to self-help or whatever, but the answer to all of your problems is between Genesis and Revelation. Now, if you don't pick up your Bible, then that's on you, right? But the answer to loneliness, to depression, to finding a mate, a better job, self-image, everything you can think about, the struggles that you may be going through as a single person between Genesis and Revelation. If you don't have a relationship with God, and that relationship is only made possible through Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. And the Bible says in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh. So that Word is what's going to carry. My point is, if you're single and you have a desire to be married, because you may be single and not have a desire to be married, we'll touch on that briefly. You need to be preparing yourself, because the worst thing that could happen is you stumble across your it, male or female, and you're not ready, like the virgins that was looking to borrow some oil. And that flows both ways. It mostly flows statistically in this day and age with men. That's why I say about process. It's important for young men to get off of a process. You either about something or you not. That's all, right? Any one of us, if you've been thinking about doing something, could do it right now. You could enroll in a college on your phone right now. So you either about something or you're not. So when you are in the process, let's talk about from the male's point of view, and a woman comes along through God's divine grace, and she's ready and you're not ready. Now you're telling her to wait while you get to the level in which you need to be. Honestly, we don't have time for that anymore, right? Maybe that was back in the day when you had, I'll work 7 years and you give me a sister, I took the veil off. Just kidding. I work another 14 years. People don't have 14 minutes, right? Like, so now if you're not whatever you need to be, people have options and they're gone, right? This is what leads to breakups, divorce, and things like that. When you grew up in a small town or a village in another country, it's no wonder divorce is low percentage, because divorce and do what? If we live in a town that only had 100 or 1,000 people, right, we just make it work. But now I just go on my phone, and depending on what dating app I'm on, I could get something lined up for in between the dinner and the concert. I could have something lined up somewhere in Mass. I'd never even been here, maybe. You get my point? So when you have options, remember, positives and negatives, we have to be more honest with those things, because sometimes that's what we go to, because before you may stay in a situation or a state of marital status, single or married, because you didn't have options. And now when you explore options, whether right or wrong, you say, well, let me act upon this because it's available. Sometimes we do certain things because we have access to it. It's like celebrities with drugs and all these things, right? Those were vices that were in them. But if someone gave you unlimited money, Lord only knows what we would be doing, right? Because now the vices that you have inside, you can feed those vices. It's like that in the digital situation. So when we look at it, we first have to get back to this concept of love. And that starts with yourself, right? Self-esteem is very important, right? And I will always go back to putting it more so on encouragement for the women's side, right? Because men have their own issues. I've really sympathized with women, to be honest with you, to have to deal with being subject to the head of a complete idiot at times got to be difficult. You get my point? Like, we could speak candid, is to put yourself under bad leadership, advice, concept, anything, even picking a vacation. Why would you pick that? Like, everything you just think, can you just make a good decision? That has to be difficult, right? This is what we're going to get to in that, right? As a man, you can grab someone easier. Nothing is 100%, but easier of a lesser faith, because you have to lead that house. But if the woman has a stronger faith and the man has a lesser faith, and now you have kids, the kid's going to look at you going to church, dad not going to church, I'm not going to church. And this is the struggles that we have. So it's important for us to make sure we have very healthy self-esteem as single people. You always have to go back to Genesis. God, in the beginning, God created light and there was darkness, and he started making things, but that wasn't enough, because on the sixth day, he said, let us make man in our own image and our likeness. And then let's give him, just like we have, dominion over things, because God have dominion, right? The Bible says, I swear by myself, because I look around, nobody before me, above me, everything is beneath me, right? So man is made in that. We live too defeated day by day. Stop letting your job defeat you. Stop letting loved ones defeat you, because loved ones will bring you down faster than anyone else. Stop letting your friends defeat you. Stop letting your self-image defeat you. All these things that we struggle with hinders our spiritual nature. Everyone is spiritual, whether you go to church or not, right? You're made in the image of God. We hinder our spiritual growth without a strong, healthy self-esteem. And I don't know how many times we teach and preach strong, healthy self-esteem. Jesus had a very strong self-esteem, to the point where in John chapter 8 through 10, he was talking to the Pharisees, who he knew were trying to kill him. And they were basically saying, remember, you were able to do these miracles through Beelzebub. And Jesus is basically saying, translated in normal vernacular, is, so y'all have me confused with somebody else, because I know where I came from. It's you who don't know where you came from. And they talking about, well, what you talking about? Remember, he said, I know who my father is. You don't know who your father is. Remember, they started with Moses, then they talked about God. And he was telling them, I know who I am. How many times in your New Testament do the apostles wake up and it says Jesus was somewhere off praying? Jesus didn't need human interaction to validate who he is, right? Remember when he was talking to Pilate, and Pilate was asking questions and he wasn't answering, and Pilate said, don't you know I have the power? And that's when Jesus said, oh, now we're talking power. I'll respond, because you only have power because it was given to you. So now we understand that Jesus don't need to defend himself, right? Sometimes we get too caught up in defending ourselves, where Proverbs talk about Solomon saying, two fools arguing from a distance, right? Well, I don't know who's right. So that we get caught up in that. So we have to at least have a healthy self-esteem. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, some of us take that to the next level, right? You know, turn your camera the other way sometime and take some pictures of something other than your face. Have some balance, but we gotta have to have some self-value. If you feel that you need someone else to validate you, you're on a slippery slope, because at any time where that person is having an off day, now you're doomed, because your validation was solely relied on that other person. So it's important for us to understand that when we look at Corinthians, and Paul is talking about the difference between the virgin and the married wife, that's his point, right? Virgin is, you're married to Christ, right? You have the perfect groom or the perfect husband. You have to focus your mind there. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, a couple of things let's go through really quick. Let's look at 1 Corinthians 7, verse 34. Someone read that for us. It's on the board. This is New King James on the board, but if you have another version, or if you like to read 1 Corinthians 7, verse 34.
His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord, wholly in body and in spirit. But a married woman has to think about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband.
Okay, so when we talk about church, think of your church, your local congregation in 30 days. The structure of church activities, those who are single can give more. Right now, when you're single, if you're looking for a spouse, that part don't appeal to you, but hear me out. Everything that we're talking about in terms of spiritual interaction means going from this earthly shell to the next. We're talking about things that have eternal significance or consequences, right? Sometimes if you are about God's work more and buy into what God wants you to do, seek ye first the kingdom, God will bless those other things. Some of us, God has a spouse waiting, but his point is that spouse is ready and you're not ready. So you should be doing things for other people, because when you're a spouse, in order to be a great spouse, you need to be thinking about someone other than yourself. So if you can get your training in your congregation, see, when you look at Ephesians, before it says wives submit to husbands, it says a verse before that, each one of you should be submitting to each other. So therefore, wives and husbands would already know how to be married couples if our congregational structures were more healthy. And that's how we have to look at it. So this is what we're saying is, get your training in your local congregation. That goes for males to females, because the Bible says older should teach the younger. We have to go back to training. When I look at other world religions, those religions do a much better job of training their younger generation. Judaism, Islam, right? There's very few confusion there. You may not want to practice that religion, but even in not practicing as an adult, you know exactly where your family and culture stand, right? When I lived in Atlanta, there was a very large East African population. And them East African women, they'll do all the dating in the world, but they never gonna marry you, because they know if you brought an American husband back to your family, the village would explode. So they would only get so attached. Now you gotta think, would we have that same resolve for a Christian? Would we say, well, I'll date, but I'll not? No, right? But you got women who are thousands of miles away from wherever they came from, still buying into a concept that's been after generation. So other cultures in the world today do a much better job of instilling in each generation what is expected of us. As a Christian, it's expected of you to be a strong Christian. We rely too much on deacons, elders, and ministers, right? You have a friend, that friend will respond more to you teaching them the gospel than coming to church. But if you're not living the gospel, that person don't see no difference between you and them. So that's why it's hypocritical coming out of your mouth, so you get someone else. Again, look at this as its totality. Don't think of it as I'm single, I want to be married, or I'm single, I don't want to be married. Think of it as being a Christian first. First, always identify yourself as a Christian. Don't be black, don't be white. Be a Christian. Don't be male, don't be female. Be a Christian first. Doesn't mean you can't be those other things. Don't be single, don't be married. Be a Christian first. Because in the next life is there marriage. Doesn't the Bible say that? There's no marriage in the next life. So therefore, being connected with God and with your brothers and sisters is first and foremost. Remember, they tried to trick Jesus and ask him, what's the greatest command? What did he mention is what? Love your God with all your heart, mind, body, soul, spirit, everything. Second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. If we can love each other as we would love ourselves, our congregations will be stronger, and we will create a foundation of almost like a graduating class of qualified candidates to go out into the world, either as single adults or married. But too often people are leaving their congregations unqualified to be into the world. So when you're unqualified, link up with somebody qualified, that's confusion and chaos. So it's important to always come back to who you are. Remind yourself that Genesis 1, read that. Don't only just read the 6th day. Read that some days to say, wait a minute, I'm not my job. I'm not my marital status. I'm not my gender. I'm not my race. I'm not my bank account amount. I'm made in the image of God Almighty. And when you think of that, that will help your self-confidence. Then you think of Jesus and say, yeah, let me try to do for others more than I do for myself, and maybe get my mind off of these things. And that's how we get into this concept here of life is filled with various stages of life. Then we get this next concept. Someone read for us Philippians 4:11 through 13. Learn to be content in the current stage of your life.
Not that I speak in regard to me, for I have learned, whatever state I am, to be content. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere in all things I have learned both to be both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Okay, we know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me like the back of our hand, but do we put it together with being content? Not really, right? Be content where you are. This only goes to those of us who are seeking to be married, right? You may be, I'm single, I'm gonna be like Paul, marriage is really not for me. But if you're seeking to be married, we'll get to that in a couple of points in a second. Don't let that seek be an obsessive drive, right? It's almost like if you're seeking to have a better job or a better car or to lose weight, and all these things that are better in and of themselves, but when they become an obsession, that's when it's a problem. When you spend more time at the gym than anywhere else, that's a problem, right? Unless you Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't understand that. I'm asking people, are you going into movies, or like, are you making money off of this? I'm just confused. The six-pack is great, but what are you doing with life? You got people that don't work but got a six-pack. Again, concept, I'm kind of old school, so I don't really understand those things. So when we look at it as that, is not to let things be an obsession. Be content where God has you, because remember, God is the driving force of your life. You may be where you are because of bad decision you made and God slowed you down. How often do we think of that? God may say, wait, I saved you. You didn't even recognize that. You out here cursing me for not being progressed, but look what you're about to do. Slow down. And God has done that throughout the Old Testament, right? So when we look at it, always think, maybe God has something better in store for me. That's where I am. How many people have been late somewhere and found out it was an accident on the same route you were going, and be like, I'm out here cussing in the car, not knowing that could have been me? What if your life is like that? What if God said, I slowed your 2016 down because you would have had a horrible 2017? You didn't see, I'm outside of time. I can see your birth date and end date at the same time. You are making bad decisions, not consoling me, but because I love you so much, I'm going to reroute you to get you back. How many people do GPS and it say right? You say, I know the way, you in the law, and she say, rerouting. Because you don't listen. That's how we do. Some of us leave a Bible reading, a Bible study, a worship service, and God say, take a right, and you go out the door to the left. And he's saying, I thought we just spent 2 hours talking about going to the right, and he have to reroute you. If you end up taking a left in a bad way, don't be upset at God, because God could be saying, had you take a right, you would have been further along. Now, that's painful to think of it that way, because it puts some of the ownership on ourselves, right? But some of us are in a job we don't like because we took that job. By the time we put the prayer request in, we already accepted that job. We got to be honest. So we didn't ask God, right? So now you asking for a miracle, get me out of this mess that I put myself in. And God does those things, but sometimes he wants you and him to be on the same page. But let's just agree that you were the one who took the job without asking me, right? So let's not do this again. That happens with our lives, because when you're single, you're accountable for you, right? So you have to be accountable. Now, when you marry, somebody could bring you down, your credit down, because they making bad decisions. But you single, your credit tore up. You got to look at, Michael Jackson said, the man in the mirror, because you won with yourself. So if you stop swiping, your credit be better. So when you look at these things, it hurts, but that self-reflection is what you need. That's how you progress in life, right? More people need to reflect on the things that they are or aren't doing correct to be better people. This world would be a better place. So this is talking about that self-reflection, right? And Paul is saying, wait a minute, I've had and I've not had. This is one of my favorite verses because I can attest to this, right? I know what it's like literally to have nowhere. When I moved to Atlanta, I had nowhere. I slept on the floor for like 3 months at my friend's house. And I know what it's like to have money, both, right? I know what it's like to literally one night just don't eat. Not because you on a diet, you not fasting, it's because you have no money. People tell me they're broke, they got credit card, bank account, right? Broke is no resource. You have no credit card, you have no bank account. Even if somebody was like, hey man, let's go get something, $10, you thinking to yourself, if I do credit instead of debit, maybe tomorrow by the time they get it, then I can eat. See, if you never had to do math like that, you don't know what it does. Talk about you don't have money, right? So Paul is saying, I've been destitute, like without, and I've had, and I learned to be content in both scenarios. Of course, we be content with the money, but can we be content without, right? So when you talk about single, those of us who are looking for a spouse, maybe God is saying to you, can you be content without a spouse? No. Maybe God said, well, then you can't have no spouse. Because I give the blessings. Remember in Deuteronomy, the Bible says what? I give wealth. I decide. I raise nations up. Raise them just like a toy. I just like building Legos. Who will rise, who will fall? I decide that. Right? So when we look at that, go back to the interaction between God and Job. Where were you? When I told the oceans, no, that's all, or flung the star, oh, I was nowhere, right? Sometimes we feel like we're the God in our own life. And when you're single, you could go down that dangerous path because you are not answering to someone else. You may have moved out the house or different things like that. So when we look at this in its totality, we always have to come back to being content. I wrote down a couple of concepts here. Don't misinterpret your blessing for a curse. Being single in church doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Christian life doesn't start when you have a family. Marriage isn't better or worse than singleness. It's just different. Being single may be a waiting season, but it doesn't mean you have to waste the season sitting on the bench. Start living the life God designed for you. God has great plans for you right now. Some of us will say, well, I'll be a stronger Christian when I get married because then I have a spouse and kids. And that's way too late. Way too late. That's like going through a semester of school, say, well, I'm going to study when the finals come. That may have worked college, undergrad, but anybody in a graduate program or higher can tell you that is way too late. By the time you crack that, you think, was I even present in these sessions? That's way too late. So we have to get into practice mode, right? There's a book called The Outliers, and it talks about this 10,000 rule. And it starts looking at all of these great achievers in life. And it wasn't that they were so much better than everyone else. It's that they practiced with the intent to get better more hours than other people. 10,000 of those hours. It talked about the Beatles. By the time they came to the United States, they had already played 1,200 concerts together. Now, come on. If 4 people playing 1,200 gigs, we can make a song on the fly. It's not necessarily that they're so much better. It's that they had practice with the intent to get better. Meaning that if you were great without practice and somebody was good with practice, look, right? Because hustle, you have a lot of people in the subways in New York talented. And you flick them some coin. You got people on the TV and the radio with not a drop of talent, but they have hustle. See, so they got to where they are. You may be smarter than your boss, director, supervisor. They out-hustled everybody else. So when you look at that, putting your hand to a plow, don't give up, right? This world is set up where the harder you put in, the more you till the ground, the more going to sprout up. We have to go back to that concept to be an active participant of our blessing. So when we think about it, that concept there, that was my point, is check yourself in the game. Too many people sitting on the bench, on the sidelines of life. People live as if they're going to get a refund, a redo, a do-over. The days, weeks, months, years, decades you blow, there is no getting that back. Right? Like, I see people blowing their 20s as if when you get 30, you could be able to be like, now let me get this wisdom and go back to 20. That's gone. Like, you do realize you only going through life this way, right? Like, people, sometimes ask my friends, like, do you think you get reincarnated? Like the way you live almost make it seem like you feel like I'm just trying to absorb, and the next time when I come back around, but there's no more back around. Like, yeah, there's only 52 weeks, right? And if you go out 3-4 times, 52 weeks, that year is over. Like, it's done. You realize that. So when we think of it that way, check yourself into the game of life. Invest in you.
That's right.
Right? Invest in you. Be a steward over little things before you start demanding of God big things. Next one. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Someone read for us 1 Corinthians 9:24.
Don't you realize that in a race, everyone runs, but only one person gets the prize? So run to win.
Philippians 2:16 says, holding fast the word of life so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Too many people live life day to day and not long term. You can't be single thinking that way. No matter if you're on the path of wanting to be married or you want to be single for the rest of your life, you cannot live your life only concerned with fun. That word fun, I battle my friends on. I don't know what that means, right? Like I know things are perspective, but being an adult comes with responsibilities. You cannot go vacation every month, right? I can't make sure my Instagram is popping and pay bills. How? You ever wonder that? You ever see some people say, how you pay bills? You ever do math? Right? Maybe, say, well, I can guess how much they make. How you pay bills? How you able to go to every island God created and still could pay? What job allowed them to have that much time off almost, right? Like professional travelers. You as an adult understand you have to pick something, right? You a jack of all trades, master of none. You have to pick something. Life is about stages and responsibilities. Sometimes you may be in a stage of your life where you may not be able to travel as much. Some of my friends don't understand that concept because they think only about themselves, living in the moment. But once those years go by, what do you gain, right? And again, I'm not against these things. I'm talking about moderation for life. I know a lot of female friends who travel all the time. They talk about traveling culture. Them women are no more culture. I'm going to be honest with you. Them women are the girls I know, no more culture. They don't talk no different. They don't act no different. Because when you traveling, I love this about people who want to travel every week. Why do you think that just because you travel, you will become a better person? What if you link up with other idiots from another country, right? Because if I travel to other country and I only play the bar scene, why would I assume I would excel at life? I don't understand that. Like, my homegirls would be like, oh, I'm culture. Like, what do you culture? We go out, you still ordering chicken tenders. Like, what are you talking about? Like, just because you've been to a lot of islands and your passport tatted up don't mean that you any better than me because you've been to more places. What are you doing when you get to those places? Right? If you getting blasted drunk in Tahiti, you could do that downstairs. You could have saved yourself, but people create a false narrative, and sometimes we play into that. Now we start thinking, man, I wish I could travel, and they telling you, man, this is the life to live. So sometimes you got to look at it and say, life is a marathon, not a sprint. I'm not at that point in my life where I passed that stage or I'm trying to get back. Financial is the same way as physical. You may have a goal, physical, on a diet. So you have to stop certain things to get to a goal, right? Financial, you may have a financial goal. You want to buy a home or get a better car. You may have to stop certain things to get. Your friend may not have that goal. That's why they're able to do certain things. So you have to think that way as a single person, because as a single person, a lot of times we think so much through the eyes and lenses of those around us who are in the same situation. And now we start ranking ourselves against them. Married people do that too with their married friends, but it's something that I just wanted to touch on with that. Next one is don't rush into wrong decisions out of a lack of patience. Wait on the Lord. Someone read for us Genesis 29:20, and then someone follow that up with 2 Samuel 5:4-5. Genesis 29:20, and then 2 Samuel 5:4-5.
So Jacob said 17 years for Rachel. And they seemed to marry, but a few days because the love he had for her.
Okay, 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel 5, 4 through 5. Nobody.
Samuel was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And at Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel, and Judah 33 years.
So let's work our way to David and go back to Jacob. He was anointed. Remember when Samuel, God said, go to this guy's house. There's a king there. And the little boy, shepherd boy, was picked. He was 15. The sister read he was how old when he began to reign? 30. How many years is that? 15 to 30. 15. How many of us is willing to wait 15 years for a blessing? Some of us don't want to wait 15 minutes. How many of us, if God told you, look, these 15 years are going to be the toughest time you ever experienced, but post them 15, your mind couldn't fathom, but you get to pick. You get to pick to be regular for life or destitute for 15 and the most successful you can ever dream of. Be honest with yourself. How many of us would say, okay, I'll do the 15 years of struggle?
Well.
Right? See, when God is giving the blessing, remember, God knows your heart. So God knows what you prayed for, but he knows also with your heart. God said, you don't want that prayer. I can show you how to get that prayer. You want to get that prayer? And we say, nah, just, you know what I mean? I was caught up in this lectureship. I said, she was praying for it, so I started praying for her. I don't want that. God said, okay, I didn't think so. But you know me and you got a way different relationship there. Don't you get caught up in these, because we leave these things and we just be, your energy bounce off on me. I say, I don't know, I seen this sister asking for it. I'm going to ask for it. God said, no, you're not that sister. Did you hear what you asked for? So when we think of it that way, look, are we willing, those of us who have aspiration in education, or you think you have aspiration in education, right? Are you willing to eat oodles and noodles in the 20s while your friends are jet set to get to your 30s to be able to do financially whatever you want while your friends are still doing whatever they were doing? I was about to throw a profession out, but I don't know where y'all work, so I don't want to throw nobody under the bus. Are you willing to make that sacrifice? This society don't understand sacrifices anymore, right? People just live in the moment, but there was a time where our parents, and God knows the grandparent generation, made sacrifices, right? My grandfather, when it was Friday, for all his faults, I won't get into that, but when he got paid, he gave the check to my grandmother. I never was raised in a concept of my father or my grandfather not working, right? So sometimes the disconnect is because how people were raised. Therefore, that's why I don't understand that concept, right? I've seen being down and out. You have to crawl your way through life. Nobody's going to give you anything. So when you look at it that way, are you willing to grind it out? Then when we look at the Jacob situation, the brother worked 7 years for Rachel, and it said it seemed to him how long? Just a couple days. Why though? Because the love he had for her. Some of us are dating and in situations that will lead to marriage, but are you willing to wait? There could be family obligations. There could be educational obligations. There could be things that are blocking the union. Are you willing to wait? Some people not willing to wait. Again, will you wait on a blessing? If God said, listen, if you go through these 24 months, it's going to be very difficult, lonely, but you're going to have the best marriage you could ever dream of after that. Or you can, be single and just live life and just date people for the rest of your life and just be okay. What would you pick? Like, we have to be honest to understand that God is not a magician, right? He's weaving and molding us. So he's expecting us to respond to his molding as the potter, right? So we have to know he knows what's best for us and what we're really asking. Sometimes he knows what's best for us, but we don't want that. Right? God sometimes have a blessing for you, but I don't want that, right? It's like somebody give you a sandwich or something, you thinking, no, I said I was hungry. I don't want that. I want what I like. You see what I'm saying? So when we think of it that way, we always have to understand that don't rush in the wrong decision out of lack of patience. There's a lot of people